Welcome to Mélomani's virtual season. I'm Kim Rayleigh, flutist and co-artistic director.
I'm Tracy Richardson, harpsichordist and co-artistic director. We miss seeing you in person this season, and we hope you are well. This season, we will offer you a series of 5 free streamed programs.
Each program brings you Mélomani's provocative pairings of early music and contemporary music. They will include Baroque music, solos, duos, music from our living composers, and short interviews with the composers.
We have 3 new CDs of contemporary music to sample for you this season. The first is Ultraviolet, with 5 pieces for the ensemble.
A Hint of Light Remains has 4 duos written for Tracy and me, and Up to the Light has the 4 large-scale pieces written by Mark Hagerty for our ensemble and guests.
Visit our website at mélomanie.org for further information on our programs, to hear the longer composer interviews, and for further information on our CDs.
Each CD comes with a beautiful insert of program notes and special artwork. We hope you'll enjoy our programs this season.
Greetings from the ensemble. We'd like to spend about 30 minutes with you in our program today. We've just heard the ensemble play 1 movement from Telemann's Paris Quartet in A major. Today we'd like to introduce you to one of our new CDs, Up to the Light, with an excerpt from the title track by Mark Hagerty. Up to the Light is the collection of Mark Hagerty's 4 large works for Mélomanie and guests. We'll also check in with another of our CDs, Ultraviolet, with musical excerpts from Larry Nelson's Moonbow. In addition, Christof will solo for us from Bach. To introduce the pieces, we'll hear short interviews with Larry Nelson and Mark and Chris Hanning, percussionist. Enjoy.
Welcome, everyone. We're here today with Larry Nelson, whose piece Moonbow appears on one of Melomanie's upcoming CDs. And so welcome to you, Larry. Larry was a longtime faculty member at Westchester University teaching music theory and composition. And he's also had a long relationship with Mélomanie. And so today we'd just like to talk a little bit about this great work, Moonbow, which we've performed a number of times and recently recorded. So welcome, Larry, and thanks for writing this amazing piece for us. I wonder if you could tell us, first of all, what is a moonbow?
A moonbow. Well, a moonbow is sometimes referred to as a lunar rainbow or a moon rainbow, and it's the reflection of ice crystals off of the light of the moon, and it appears in the opposite side of the sky from the moon. So it is a rainbow of sorts, but the one that you see at the edge of day, either dawn or dusk, always reflected from the moon.
That space between the moon and the opposite side of the sky having that relationship. And it makes me think a lot about that sense of space that we get in the piece. There's a real transparency in the texture. And when we have the whole ensemble playing together, I think you come up with some pretty cool colors, actually, where you can still hear every voice individually. And there's so much counterpoint going on. I wonder if you would talk a little bit about maybe some of the influences about the style of this piece. I know that there's a blues section, and there's also a section that you write interwoven but not Bach. So obviously, even if you're not influenced, you're trying to really determine a real character sense for some of these different sections. Can you talk a little bit about that?
In composing this piece, I was working with small ideas, maybe a chord, maybe a couple of chords, maybe a melodic gesture or a rhythmic gesture, which then each of these might have been expanded into a slightly longer section, which was then expanded even more. And these became little tiny pieces. And now each of the pieces probably had some particular focus. I know that when I decided Moonbow was going to be the title, I was very conscious of timbre as a parameter in music. So I had done a fair amount of electronic music and computer music over time. And I'm always fascinated by the overtone structure of events. And I wanted to try to recreate some of that in writing for the ensemble. So oftentimes I will have some vertical sonority, but each of the instruments enters one after another to sort of make it seem like it's a filter opening up to give you these timbre qualities. Now, the interwoven but not Bach, that section, I was conscious that, counterpoint was the idea of that. And I wanted to have something that was sort of fun and would throw these gestures back and forth between the players. And I just thought it was fun to do it. And in no way was I trying to imitate Bach. Bach did it too well. There's no reason to try to do it again. But I wanted to have fun with it. And in fact, having fun was a very important parameter in the entire piece. I wanted this to be a collection of these small events, these small little pieces, but I wanted the ensemble to have some fun with it. And I was really pleased to see how Mélomanie did that. It showed on stage, and I think it shows in the recording too. So I'm really pleased about that.
Larry, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about when this commission was made. I wonder, probably either Tracy or Kim approached you. Did they come to you with any idea in particular, or did they just say, hey, Larry, here's a bunch of money. I want you to write whatever you want. Write your dream piece. What was it?
The two of them met me for lunch, I believe, in 2013 or thereabouts. And indeed, they said, we're not going to ask you to try to follow any stylistic thing. We really do want you to write what you want. And I considered that as the ideal commission. I appreciated it and I accepted. And then I started to research the instruments in the ensemble. And I found that viola da gamba is not an instrument I had ever composed for. I needed to learn something about that. I had written for harpsichord, but it was back as a graduate student, and I was trying to imitate some English pieces from the late Renaissance, early Baroque. So my harpsichord background was not much better. So I had to research both of these. I had written for flute and for violin and for cello. So I felt the challenge of, but the enjoyment of trying to put all of these pieces together. So I spoke to Tracy at some length about harpsichord. I spoke to Donna at some length about what a viola da gamba can do. And it was fun putting it all together.
I'm sure it was. That sounds like quite an experience. We, of course, have had many composers write works with Mélomanie, and the story is always the same. Well, I had to learn how to write for harpsichord. I had to learn how to write for gamba. You know, everyone knows how to write for flute and violin and cello, but so that's a real challenge. Thank you so much, Larry. This has been a pleasure getting to know you a bit and getting to know more about Moonbow. We'll certainly look forward to performing it much, much more, and we hope everyone will pick up their copy of this CD so they can hear Moonbow as we interpreted it. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Ismar.
I'd like to welcome everyone today. We're going to have a conversation with composer Mark Hagerty, as well as Chris Hanning. Chris Hanning is a percussionist who joined us on a recording of Mark's piece, Up to the Light. And today we're going to have a little conversation with Mark and Chris about sort of where this piece came from and what it's all about. So without further ado, Mark, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about, when the commission was made, under what circumstances, and maybe a little bit of backbone about the piece.
Sure. An occasion arose where a piece was commissioned for a person who happens to be a friend and supporter of Mélomanie. And that person has led a long and generous and kind of inspiring life. Turning point for him was his unhappy participation in the Vietnam War. But his approach to his life and to healing was to really give, and he's a giving guy in very many realms. And so that's admirable, and it has worked for him. He's also a huge jazz fan, and so that influenced our thoughts a little bit.
So Chris, of course, you're not only the dean of the Welsh School at Westchester University, but you're also a great percussionist, and you're very well rounded. In reading about your career, it's really incredible to see all the things that you've done. What was it like for you to participate in this project, but also to bring along this sort of what I think of as a little bit of an odd couple between the chime and the vibes?
Well, I was really excited to get another opportunity to play with Mélomanie. Mark brings such a collaborative element to everything that he does. And certainly all the pieces that I've done with him in the past, there's this great sense of collaboration where he's asking me about the instruments. We talk about them. He thinks through like, well, what can I do? How can I mix this with this instrumentation? And so I was really excited. The chime was definitely, I have to say, thinking about all the weird setups I've ever played before, this is definitely up there. I mean, it's great because it's an economy of setup. So this was just, vibraphone and a lone chime bar. The interesting thing about playing vibraphone and then hitting this chime with a mallet that's this big and a target that's this big, it's a little scary actually, because you can miss, It's a really unique combination of instruments and of quality for this piece. I was really thrilled to get the opportunity to play it.
That's great. So Mark, you mentioned about the Vietnam inspiration. I wonder if you could dig into that a little bit more. Tell us maybe how that relates to the title of the piece, Up to the Light. I also wonder about the instrumentation. How does the presence of the chime in particular and the vibraphone relate to what the piece is about?
Right. Well, without being overly programmatic or too literal, the inspiration was the progress of this man's life. For that reason, it starts quite dark. There are three kind of sonorous moments in the piece where everybody's playing and it's as orchestrated as it can be. One at the beginning, which kind of sets this dark tone, one in the middle, which hopes to transition a bit, and one at the end that is more open and brighter and more celebratory and hopefully more full of light. So in very general terms, I wanted to create an arc along those lines. The chime, I have a thing, I love orchestral bells. I think it's a gorgeous sound, and if used properly, it's a beautiful sound in itself, but it also has all these connotations. Right? Mm-hmm. And so my hope was that if it came in the right context, it could sound like a death knell, or as at the beginning, or at the end, I hope it sounds more celebratory, like wedding bells or something more along those lines. As to the vibraphone, that was really inspired mostly by the dedicatee's love for jazz. The challenge of marrying up the very different sounds of the vibraphone on one hand and the harpsichord on the other just seemed like a really good challenge.
I find that fascinating. You know, I think over the course of the piece, you really get a sense of trajectory and journey. And I think a big part of that is because we have these, you mentioned those sort of passacalia sections that come in and out of the texture. And through those sections, you have such a, sense of pulse, which then, when you add the chime to that, I find that it creates this sense of inevitability, the passage of time, you might think. But I think also what's interesting is how each of the solos throughout maybe brings into sort of a profile, perhaps different emotional states throughout this journey. Of course, the flute sort of has its thing almost throughout the whole piece. Chris, you're also similarly featured. It's hard for you not to be a feature because whenever you're playing, we want to listen to you, my solo is near the beginning. The cello solo is near the beginning, and it's for me the most triumphant sort of moment in the piece. But each of the solos really develops in a different way. I don't know if you have anything to add to this, Chris, in terms of your solo and what that means. It's obviously a little later in the piece.
Well, it's definitely has a jazz flair to it, and I think the thing that for me it was kind of stepping out of accompanying this ensemble in moments, and then having this moment where it really feels almost like a solo vibraphone piece, and has jazz elements to it, which can be very tricky. And I'll say another thing is just how Mark used the color of the vibraphone in different ways. There are dead strokes on the bars, which give a totally different quality. There are moments where you're letting the pedal ring and doing dead strokes underneath that. There's a moment where you flip the mallets over and you play with the back ends of the sticks, which gives a completely different quality. So he really did a great job of exploring all those sonic possibilities. And the solo it's a challenge to play. I'll say in the recording session, I was fairly nervous doing it, but a lot of fun.
And you're right. I was using your instrument as kind of a symbol of strength.
We should also mention that this piece is going to be appearing on Mark's new CD by the same title, Up to the Light. Mark, can you tell us what's on your CD?
This CD is actually kind of a compendium of the larger pieces that I've done with. She tried to count the pieces, and depending on how you count, I've probably worked with Mélomanie about 8 times over a period of almost 2 decades.
Wow.
So this is a real in-depth, long-term collaboration for both parties. I wanted to try to capture the 4 larger pieces in a double CD. It contains 2 pieces that are independently recorded by Mélomanie. First piece is Trois Rivières, 3 Rivers, which includes an extra. It's all Baroque instruments and includes a second Baroque flute. And that is on their first CD called Fluorescence. And then for their CD Ultraviolet, the piece Ultraviolet, featuring guest artist Christopher Hanning. Then we did a fun project a few years ago with Icelandic, New York-based violinist Eva Ingolf, and we did arrangements of Icelandic folk songs for Mélomanie plus extra violin. So there's a suite of 6 Icelandic songs arranged for Mélomanie, and then Up to the Light.
I want to thank you both for joining me, and thanks for your contributions to this great music and creation of that great music. And we'll look forward to hearing it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ismar.
Thanks.
This is the conclusion of our program today. We hope you'll look for our other programs. We have 5 planned this season. If you'd like to hear the longer composer interviews, go to Mélomanie's website. Goodbye for now, and thank you for your support.